The JIBARO in Puerto Rico didn't just exist. They were deliberately shaped by brutal colonial forces that tried to wipe out native identities. The hidden truth behind Puerto Rico's JIBARO identity. Let's cut through the romantic bullshit and face the raw history. The JIBARO, those iconic rural farmers, the mountain folk, the backbone of Puerto Rican culture, carry deep native roots that colonizers worked hard to bury. Before the Spanish invasion hit Boracay, what they renamed Puerto Rico, the island belonged to the Taino people, fierce, organized indigenous communities who farmed, built, worshipped zemis, and lived in harmony with the land. They weren't docile. Victims? They resisted, fought, and survived longer than the official story admits. When Columbus and his crew rolled in during 1493, followed by full-on conquest, everything changed fast and violently. Disease, forced labor in gold mines, encomienda system, massacres, and enslavement decimated the Taino population. Official records claim they were basically gone by the mid-1500s or late 1700s, erased from censuses, removed as a category. But that's a lie of convenience. Many Taino survived by fleeing to the mountains, mixing with runaway Africans, Cimarrones, and blending with poorer Spanish settlers. They adapted, hid in plain sight, and kept cultural practices alive through oral traditions, agriculture, and daily life. Enter the term JIBARO. It didn't come from nowhere. Some trace it to indigenous words linked to mountain man or specific regions, but by the colonial era, it became the label slapped on these rural, mixed-heritage people, often descendants of Taino survivors and free or escaped Africans who lived off the land in the Central Highlands. The Spanish and later narratives pushed a whitened version, JIBAROs as humble, whitish peasants, romanticized in poetry and folklore to fit a national myth of harmonious blending. But the reality? Colonizers forced black tribes, enslaved Africans brought to replace dying indigenous labor, and surviving Puerto Rican natives into new identities that stripped away their original roots. This was no accident, it was erasure by design. Censuses stopped listing Indian after the late 1700s. Mixed people got reclassified as white or mestizo to downplay indigenous and African presence. The goal? Make it seem like the natives vanished so land claims, cultural continuity, and resistance could be dismissed. Yet those mountain communities, the true JIBAROs, preserved Taino influences in farming, yucca, cassava, hammocks, music, stories, even spiritual elements. They weren't just country bumpkins, they were living proof of survival against genocide and forced assimilation. Today, reclaiming that truth matters. The JIBARO isn't some pure Spanish peasant fantasy, it's a testament to indigenous resilience mixed with African strength, forged in resistance to colonizers who wanted every trace gone. Puerto Ricans calling themselves Boricua, that's straight from Taino. Boracay, land of the brave. The JIBARO existed because natives refused to disappear completely, even when the system tried to rename, reclassify, and forget them. This history isn't pretty, but it's ours. No sugarcoating, no MAGA-style hero worship of colonizers, just straight facts about survival, forced identities, and the ongoing fight to honor erased roots. The brutal theft of indigenous identities. No more lies, straight talk. European empires didn't just conquer land, they engineered a full-scale assault on who people were, forcing entire populations into fabricated boxes to justify domination, slavery, and erasure. From the 1400s onward, Spain, Portugal, Britain, France, and the Netherlands rolled out systematic tools to dismantle indigenous selfhood across continents. This wasn't accidental. It was calculated cultural genocide designed to make resistance impossible and land grabs permanent. Renaming and reclassification, colonizers slapped new labels on people like they owned them. Distinct nations with millennia-old names got lumped into lazy, dehumanizing categories. Indian for anyone in the Americas, Negro for Africans, savage or native. To strip away specific tribal, clan, or ethnic realities. In Latin America, the Spanish caste system ranked everyone by blood quantum, pure European at the top, indigenous and African mixes pushed down. This wasn't neutral admin, It erased thousands of years of self-defined identities, making people easier to control, tax, enslave, or ignore in official records. In Puerto Rico, by 1802, censuses magically showed 0 Indians. Left, pure paper genocide, reclassifying Taino descendants as mestizo or free people of color to kill any claim to native rights. Language suppression, kill the language, kill the culture. Indigenous tongues were outlawed in schools, missions, and public life. Kids got beaten for speaking their mother tongue, whippings, mouth washed with soap, isolation. Without language, oral histories, songs, knowledge of plants, medicines, governance, and spirituality fade fast. In Canada and the US, residential/boarding schools enforced English-only rules as part of civilizing missions. Same pattern hit Australia, Latin America, Africa. Result: generations lost fluency, and with it, the core of identity. Forced religion. Christian conversion wasn't optional, it was weaponized. Traditional spiritual practices got branded demonic, outlawed, or mocked. Missions and forced baptisms replaced sacred sites with churches. Ceremonies were banned under threat of violence or death. In the Americas, Taino Zemis, spiritual objects, were destroyed. In Africa, ancestral veneration suppressed. This replaced community-based worldviews with hierarchical, European-centered ones, breaking spiritual ties to ancestors and land. Boarding schools and assimilation programs, the cruelest tool. Rip kids from families and re-educate them. In North America, tens of thousands of Native children hauled to distant schools where hair was cut, symbolic identity loss. Names changed, languages forbidden, abuse rampant, including physical, sexual, and emotional. Goal: kill the Indian, save the man. Similar systems operated in the Caribbean, Latin America, Australia. Stolen generations, even parts of Africa. Many kids never returned. Thousands died from disease, neglect, or brutality. Survivors carried trauma that fractured families for generations. Land theft and displacement. Identity roots in land, sacred sites, hunting grounds, farming territories, burial places. Colonizers seized it through wars, fake treaties, forced marches, trail of tears, or outright massacres. Removing people from ancestral lands severed cultural continuity. No more access to traditional foods, medicines, ceremonies, or governance structures. In settler states like the US, reservations confined survivors to fractions of territory. In Africa, colonial borders ignored ethnic realities, splitting groups and imposing foreign rule. Legal and racial restructuring. Colonial laws built hierarchies favoring Europeans. Spanish caste system, British racial codes, French and Dutch variants all redefined people by European metrics. Mixed heritage, forced to pass as whiter for survival. This pressured indigenous folks to assimilate, abandon traditions, or face exclusion from economic or social life. Blood quantum laws later in the US further policed who counts as native, diluting claims and identities. Americas, North, Central, South, Caribbean. Diverse nations like Maya, Aztec, Inca, Taino, hundreds of North American tribes, thriving civilizations long before 1492. Complex societies with cities, agriculture, astronomy, trade networks. Africa. Cradle of humanity, oldest civilizations, kingdoms like Mali, Great Zimbabwe, sophisticated societies predating European contact by millennia. Asia, including China. Ancient continuous civilizations from internal ancestral populations. No indigenous Americans or Africans started it. European colonialism later disrupted parts. Caribbean, Haiti, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, DR, Taino, Carib, Arawak first devastated by conquest, disease, slavery. Survivors mixed with Africans and Europeans, but roots remain, Europe. Its own ancient groups, Celts, Basques, Sami, reshaped by internal conquests before exporting colonialism, the real global pattern. European expansion imposed uniform racial categories, rewrote histories Eurocentrically, minimized pre-existing cultures, and blended populations via slavery, migration, forced assimilation. Modern identities in colonized regions often mix indigenous, African, European ancestries, shaped by violence, not harmony. Bottom line. Indigenous peoples worldwide held rich, sovereign identities for eons before empires crashed in. Colonization deliberately stripped, twisted, or replaced them through brute force, policy, and domination. Reclaiming truth fights ongoing erasure, no romanticizing invaders, no whitewashing genocide. This history fuels resistance today. I love you all, I appreciate every one of you, and I thank you for your time. Stay blessed. Feel free to follow for more words of wisdom and prayers. Feel free to subscribe so that you never miss my posts, and feel free to comment. Love always. Santiago, DC Maria.